Jake Murphy stood at attention in the back row of the security detail, trying not to fidget. His dress uniform felt too tight around the collar, and sweat trickled down his back despite the perfectly controlled temperature of the alien ship. Around him, the diplomatic hall stretched vast and magnificent, filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. He was 24 years old, a lance corporal in the Marines, and he had no business being here. The detail was supposed to be for elite soldiers, decorated heroes who looked good on camera. Jake was neither. He'd been pulled from his regular assignment on the human delegation ship at the last minute when someone came down with the flu. "Wrong place, right time," his sergeant had said with a shrug. The Galactic Coalition flagship called Starbound Harmony looked nothing like the ships Jake knew. Instead of metal corridors and harsh lighting, everything seemed to glow from within. The walls shifted between colors, responding to the emotions of the aliens moving through them. Jake had been warned not to stare, but it was impossible not to. Commander Lisa Hayes stood at the podium, presenting Earth's case for joining the coalition. She spoke clearly and confidently about human achievements, about art and science and exploration. Behind her, holographic images showed Earth in all its blue and green glory. Jake felt a surge of pride watching it, but he could see the alien council members weren't impressed. Some whispered to each other. Others looked bored. One delegate, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal, actually yawned. "Humans are too young," said one of the council members, a tall creature with silver skin. "Too violent. Your species only achieved faster than light travel 5 years ago. You still fight wars among yourselves." "We've made mistakes," Commander Hayes admitted. "But we've learned from them. We're ready to join the wider community. Are you?" The question came from a being near the center of the council. She stood, and the room fell silent. Jake had been briefed on the important delegates, and he recognized her immediately. Princess Keisha of the Velkari Empire. Her people were one of the founding species of the coalition. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that looked like polished gemstone. As she moved, her skin shifted through different colors. Currently a deep purple that Jake's briefing packet said meant she was thinking carefully. "Humanity speaks well," Princess Keisha said, her voice musical but carrying easily through the chamber. "You show us your best achievements, your greatest heroes, but the coalition needs to know what humans are truly like. Not just what you wish us to see." Commander Hayes tensed. "What do you propose, Your Highness?" "I invoke the trial of worth." The princess's words caused an immediate stir among the other delegates. Jake saw Ambassador Chen, the chief human diplomat, go pale. "That's an ancient tradition," protested the silver-skinned delegate. "It hasn't been used in centuries, but it remains valid under coalition law," Princess Keisha replied smoothly. "I claim the right to test humanity's character. I will select one human, at random, to serve as my personal guard on a mission to the frontier. If this human proves worthy, humanity gains provisional membership. If they fail, your application is rejected for 50 standard years." The room erupted in debate. Jake watched as Commander Hayes and Ambassador Chen huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. This wasn't part of the plan. This was going terribly wrong. "And how will you choose this human?" asked one of the council members. Princess Keisha smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. "I will walk among them and select the one who speaks to my judgment." Before anyone could object further, she descended from the council platform. Her advisors followed, including a massive reptilian warrior that Jake recognized as a Sorix. The creature looked like it could tear a man in half without effort. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as the princess approached the human delegation. She would choose one of the senior officers, he was sure. Maybe Colonel Grant, who had 24 combat medals, or Captain Rodriguez, who'd commanded the first human deep space mission. The princess walked past them all. She moved through the rows of the honor guard, these perfect soldiers who'd been selected for their records and their appearance. They stood like statues as she examined them. Her skin shifted to a golden color that Jake's briefing hadn't explained. Then she was standing in front of Jake's row. He kept his eyes forward, focusing on a point on the far wall like he'd been trained. Don't make eye contact with dignitaries, unless addressed directly. Don't move unless ordered. The princess stopped directly in front of him. Jake's breath caught. Up close, she was even more striking. Her eyes were like opals, swirling with color. He could feel the weight of her gaze on him. And despite his training, he glanced down to meet it. She studied him for a long moment. Jake wanted to look away but found he couldn't. There was something in her eyes, an intensity that felt like it was looking straight through him. This one, Princess Keisha said, pointing at Jake. I select him. The room went completely silent. Your Highness, Commander Hayes stepped forward, her voice carefully controlled. Perhaps you'd like to reconsider. Lance Corporal Murphy is a fine soldier, but we have much more experienced. My choice is made. The princess didn't look away from Jake. This is the human who will represent your species. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. This couldn't be happening. He was nobody. He'd joined the Marines to pay for college, not to become the representative of the entire human race. The reptilian warrior, Zartok, growled something in his own language. The translation came through Jake's earpiece a moment later. You choose this weak one? He looks like he's barely seen combat. I have made my selection, the princess replied calmly. The council members conferred among themselves. Finally, the silver-skinned delegate spoke. The trial of worth is valid under our laws. Princess Keisha has the authority to invoke it. Do the humans accept these terms? Ambassador Chen looked like he might be sick. Commander Hayes's jaw was tight with anger she couldn't express. But what choice did they have? Refusing would mean immediate rejection. We accept, Hayes said. Just like that, Jake's life changed. Within an hour, he was separated from his unit and escorted to the princess's ship. His friends tried to say goodbye, but there wasn't time. His belongings were packed and transferred. He didn't even get to send a message to his family back on Earth. As he stood in the docking bay of the Crystal Dawn, the Velkari science vessel, Jake looked back at the human ships growing smaller in the viewport. He thought about his mom, who would be so worried when she heard. His little sister, who thought he was already a hero just for being in space. His friend Ben from basic training, who'd probably laugh and tell him it figured Jake would stumble into something like this. Come, said one of the Velkari guards. The princess wishes to speak with you before we depart. Jake followed, his heart still racing. He had no idea what he was supposed to do. He'd been chosen for something he didn't understand, to represent a species he barely felt qualified to represent himself. As the ship's engines thrummed to life, beginning the journey to wherever they were going, Jake Murphy realized that being in the wrong place at the right time had just become the defining moment of his life. He only hoped he wouldn't let everyone down. The quarters they gave Jake on the Crystal Dawn were nicer than anywhere he'd ever lived. The walls glowed with soft light, and the bed adjusted itself to his body when he lay down. But he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the princess pointing at him, heard her say those words that had changed everything. On his second day aboard, a human woman knocked on his door. She was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes. Lance Corporal Murphy, I'm Dr. Nina Vasquez. I've been assigned to help you not die of embarrassment or accidentally start a war. Jake blinked. Excuse me? She smiled and walked in without waiting for an invitation. I'm a xenobiologist. I've been working with the Coalition for 5 years, studying alien cultures. My job is to teach you enough to survive the next 2 weeks without offending anyone important. She looked him up and down. You look terrified. I am terrified, Jake admitted. Good. That means you're smart. She sat down and pulled out a data pad. Let's start with the basics. Don't eat anything blue unless a Velkari offers it to you directly. It's a sign of trust. Don't touch a Saurix's scales unless they initiate contact. That's like punching them in the face. And whatever you do, don't ask about the war. What war? Exactly. If you don't know, don't ask. Trust me on this. Nina started pulling up images on her pad. The good news is that most species find humans fascinating. We're new, we're unpredictable, and we survive things that would kill most other beings. The bad news is that unpredictable makes people nervous. Over the next few days, Nina became Jake's lifeline. She explained that the Velkari could sense emotions through some kind of empathic ability, that the Saurics valued strength and directness above all else, that there were species in the coalition who communicated primarily through scent, others through color changes, and one group that barely spoke at all. Jake tried to learn it all, but it was overwhelming. On his fourth day, he was invited to dine with the ship's crew. The food was strange, textures and flavors he'd never experienced. He tried to be polite, tried to remember all of Nina's lessons, but he grabbed the wrong utensil and accidentally insulted the ship's cook by suggesting the food needed salt. Zartok, the reptilian warrior who served as the princess's advisor, watched the whole thing with obvious contempt. "This is the human who will prove his species worthy?" he said, not bothering to lower his voice. "He cannot even manage a simple meal." Jake felt his face burn with shame. He excused himself and returned to his quarters, feeling like a complete failure. He'd been on the ship less than a week and had already proven he was the wrong choice. A soft chime at his door made him look up. Princess Keisha stood in the corridor, alone except for a single guard. "May I enter?" she asked. Jake scrambled to his feet. "Of course, Your Highness. Yes, please." She glided into the room, and her guard remained outside. Up close, without the formal setting of the council chamber, she seemed less intimidating. Her skin was currently a soft blue color that Nina had told him meant calm thoughtfulness. "You are wondering why I chose you," she said. "It wasn't a question. Every minute of every day," Jake admitted. The princess moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars streaming past. "During the presentation, there was a moment when one of your junior diplomats dropped his papers. Do you remember?" Jake frowned, thinking back. "Yeah, I guess. The young guy. Looked like it was his first major assignment. He was really nervous. You helped him gather the papers. Then you returned to your position without drawing attention to yourself. You didn't seek recognition or praise. You simply saw someone who needed help and you helped them. That's just basic decency," Jake said, confused. "Exactly." The princess turned to face him, and her eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "Your decorated warriors stood perfect and still, performing for the cameras and the council. They were everything your commanders wanted us to see, but you acted when you thought no one was watching. That told me more about your character than any medal could." Jake sat down heavily on the bed. "But I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just a regular guy who joined up because college was too expensive. Perhaps that's precisely what the Coalition needs to see about humanity. Not your heroes. Your regular people." She moved closer. "My people, the Velkari, we have an ability. We can sense the fundamental nature of a person. Not their thoughts, but their essence. When I looked at you, I saw something that reminded me of the ancient warriors of my world. Not violence or aggression, but the capacity to protect others, even at cost to yourself." "What if you're wrong?" Jake asked quietly. "What if I mess this up and humanity loses its chance? Then we will have learned something true about your species," Princess Keisha said. "But I don't believe I'm wrong. And now, you should rest. We arrive at Rax's 7 inches 1 week, and you'll need your strength." After she left, Jake lay awake thinking about her words. He wasn't sure if they made him feel better or worse. The days passed quickly. Nina continued his education, teaching him about coalition politics and history. He learned that the Void Collective was a group that rejected the coalition's peaceful principles, believing that the strong should dominate the weak. They operated in the frontier regions, raiding colonies and stealing resources. Raxus 7 was a Velkari mining colony, Nina explained. About 3 months ago, all communication stopped. The coalition suspects the Void Collective, but they need proof before they can take military action. That's where you come in. "Me and the princess are going to investigate a possibly hostile colony?" Jake asked, his voice rising. "That's the mission?" That's the mission. You, the princess, Zartok, and a team of Velkari guards. You find evidence of what happened. You get out, and humanity gets into the coalition. Simple. That doesn't sound simple at all. Nina laughed. Welcome to space, Marine. Nothing's ever simple out here. Jake started training with the Velkari guards. They were professionals, moving with grace and precision that made his own training look clumsy. But he noticed things. They followed their procedures perfectly, but they didn't improvise. When Jake suggested an alternative approach to a tactical problem, they looked at him like he'd spoken gibberish. We have protocols for every situation, one guard explained. There's no need for improvisation, but what if the situation doesn't match the protocol? Jake asked. The guard just stared at him blankly. Zartok continued to make his disapproval clear. Humans rely too much on chaos and luck, he growled one day during training. You have no discipline, no honor. You'll get the princess killed with your reckless ways. Jake bit back a sharp reply. He was starting to understand that Zartok's hostility came from genuine concern for the princess, not personal dislike. The old warrior had probably served her family for decades. Of course, he'd be suspicious of the strange human suddenly thrust into a position of trust. On the last night before they reached Raxus 7, Jake couldn't sleep. He wandered the ship's corridors, eventually finding himself in the observation deck. Princess Keisha was already there, standing before the massive viewport. Can't sleep either? She asked without turning around. No, ma'am. Keisha. When we're alone, you may call me Keisha. Jake moved to stand beside her. Outside, the stars were beautiful beyond description. Can I ask you something? Of course. What happens if I fail? I mean, I know humanity doesn't get into the coalition, but what happens to you? She was quiet for a moment. I will have made an error in judgment that affected billions of lives. My credibility in the council will be diminished. It will make my future work more difficult. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met. Yes, she agreed. But I believe in taking risks for things that matter. Humanity matters. Jake Murphy. Your species has potential that most of the council cannot yet see. You're adaptable, resilient, and capable of great compassion. But you're also young, and sometimes foolish. The question is whether your strengths will outweigh your weaknesses when it matters most. No pressure, Jake muttered, and was surprised when she laughed. The next morning, alarms blared through the ship. They'd picked up a distress signal from Raxus 7. Faint and broken. Jake rushed to the bridge with everyone else. It's automated, the communications officer reported. Repeating on a loop. The colony's emergency beacon. Princess Keisha's skin turned a dark red that Jake had learned meant determination. Prepare the landing team. We go down immediately. As Jake suited up in the armor they'd provided, Nina found him one last time. Listen to me, she said seriously. Out there, everything you think you know might be wrong. Don't try to be a hero. Just do what you do best. What's that? Help people who need it. The rest will follow. She squeezed his shoulder. And Jake? Don't die. I've got money riding on you. Despite his fear, Jake smiled. As he headed to the shuttle that would take them down to Raxus 7, he felt something shift inside him. He might not be the hero they wanted. But maybe Nina was right. Maybe all he needed to be was himself. The shuttle descended through purple clouds, and Jake got his first look at Raxus 7. The planet was beautiful in an alien way. The vegetation was violet and deep crimson instead of green, and 3 moons hung in the sky like pearl ornaments. The colony city called New Velkar sprawled below them, gleaming structures that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. But something was wrong. The city was too quiet, too still. No lights in the windows. No movement in the streets. I don't like this, Zartok rumbled from across the shuttle bay. His clawed hand rested on his weapon. It feels like a trap. Noted, Princess Keisha said calmly. But we have a mission to complete. Jake, stay close to me. Zartok, take point with the guards. They landed in the central plaza. As the shuttle's ramp lowered, Jake smelled something strange on the air. Not quite smoke, not quite flowers. His skin prickled with unease. The team moved out in formation. 4 Velkari guards, weapons ready. Zartok prowling ahead like a predator. Princess Keisha in the middle, with Jake beside her. They'd given him a weapon, an energy pistol that felt strange in his hand, compared to the rifles he'd trained with on Earth. The city was eerily preserved. Tables in the outdoor cafes still had cups on them. A child's toy lay abandoned in the street. But no people. No bodies. No signs of violence. "It's like everyone just vanished," Jake whispered. One of the guards checked a nearby building. "The power systems are still running. Life support is active. But there's no one here." They made their way to the colony's administrative center, a tall building at the heart of the city. Inside, computers still hummed. Displays showed normal operations. Everything was working perfectly, except for the complete absence of the colonists, who should have been there. Princess Keisha moved to the main terminal. Her fingers danced across the controls, accessing the colony's records. There are transport logs from 3 months ago. Multiple ships departed in a single day, carrying the entire population. "An evacuation?" Jake asked. "But why?" Zartok growled. "And where did they go?" A sound made them all freeze. Footsteps, coming from somewhere in the building. The guards raised their weapons. Zartok's growl deepened, a sound that made Jake's bones vibrate. "Please don't shoot." A voice called out in accented but understandable English. "I'm human. I'm coming out. I'm coming out." A young man emerged from a side corridor, hands raised. He was thin, dirty, and looked exhausted. But Jake recognized the insignia on his torn jacket. Coalition Science Division. "Who are you?" Princess Keisha demanded. "Dr. Kyle Harrison. I'm an engineer. Was here on an exchange program with the colony. When the Void Collective arrived, I managed to hide in the maintenance tunnels. I've been surviving down there for 2 weeks." Jake moved forward, helping the man sit down. Harrison looked like he hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. "What happened here?" "The Void Collective showed up with 3 warships," Harrison explained, accepting water from one of the guards. "They forced everyone onto transport ships. The colonists didn't resist. I don't think they could. The collective had some kind of compliance field, made people docile and obedient. I only escaped because I was underground when they activated it, checking the power systems." "Where did they take the colonists?" Keisha asked. "I don't know, but I know why they wanted this colony." Harrison's eyes were haunted. "I've been studying the geological surveys. There's a massive deposit of quantum crystals beneath New Velkar. We're talking about enough raw materials to build 100 FTL drives. The collective is going to mine it illegally and sell it on the black market." Zartok snarled. "We need to call the fleet immediately." "We need proof first," the princess said. "The council won't authorize military action based on speculation." "Kyle, can you access the sensor logs?" "I can do better than that. I can show you the mining operation they've already started." "Follow me." 2. Harrison led them through the city to the industrial sector. Along the way, Jake noticed more signs of hasty departure. Personal belongings scattered. Doors left open. It was disturbing how completely the Void Collective had emptied the place. They reached a massive excavation site at the city's edge, and there it was. Mining equipment. None of it. Velkari design. Working away at the rock, automated systems were drilling deep into the planet's crust, extracting glowing crystals that pulsed with inner light. "That's our proof," Keisha said. She activated her communicator. "Crystal Dawn. We've found evidence of Void Collective activity. Transmitting data now." Static answered her. She frowned and tried again. Still static. "They're jamming communications," one of the guards reported, checking his equipment. "Short range only. We can talk to each other, but not the ship." "Then we return to the shuttle and leave orbit to transmit," Zartok said. "We have what we came for." But before they could move, explosions erupted around them. The ground shook, and chunks of debris rained down. Jake threw himself over Harrison, shielding the engineer as a piece of building crashed where they'd been standing. Soldiers emerged from hiding spots throughout the industrial sector. Not Velkari. These were mixed species, all wearing the dark armor of the Void Collective, 20, maybe 30 of them, weapons trained on the small team. "Surrender," a voice called out. "Lay down your weapons." Zartok roared and charged. The old warrior moved like lightning, his claws flashing. He took down 3 collective soldiers before return fire caught him in the shoulder. He stumbled, purple blood staining his armor. The Velkari guards opened fire, and the plaza became chaos. Jake pulled Harrison behind cover, his heart hammering. This was nothing like training. This was real, and people were going to die. Princess Keisha fought with grace and precision, her weapon dropping collective soldiers with each shot. But they were outnumbered. One of the Velkari guards went down, then another. Jake saw a collective soldier flanking the princess's position, taking aim at her back. Without thinking, he raised his pistol and fired. The shot took the soldier in the chest, and he fell. But more kept coming. They were being overwhelmed. "We need to move," Jake shouted. He'd spotted something during their walk through the city, the maintenance tunnels Harrison had hidden in. "Kyle, where's the nearest tunnel access?" "Kyle, through that building, about 50 meters. Can you lead us?" "Yes, but then we run. Now." Jake grabbed a piece of mining equipment, something that looked like a cutting torch. He set it to overload and threw it at a group of advancing soldiers. The explosion when it detonated was bigger than he expected, creating a wall of fire and smoke between them and the collective forces. "Go," he yelled. Zartok, wounded but still fighting, grabbed the fallen guards. The princess laid down covering fire. The team ran for the building Harrison indicated, with Jake bringing up the rear. Collective soldiers pursued them, firing as they ran. Energy blasts scorched the ground around Jake's feet. He ducked into the building last, just as the doorway exploded behind him. Harrison led them through dark corridors to a maintenance hatch. They piled through into tunnels that smelled of machinery and recycled air. Behind them, they could hear the collective forces breaking through. "Where do these tunnels go?" Keisha demanded. "Everywhere," Harrison said. "The whole city's connected." "But they'll figure that out soon and flood the system." Jake's mind raced. They were trapped, outnumbered. The collective knew they were here, and the fleet wouldn't arrive for days. One guard was dead, and Zartok was badly hurt. But then he remembered something from the geological data Harrison had shown them. The quantum crystal deposits made the ground unstable. That's why the colony had been built with such extensive tunnel systems to monitor for seismic activity. "Kyle," Jake said, "if someone overloaded the mining equipment, if they triggered a collapse in the crystal deposits, what would happen?" "It would be catastrophic. The whole mining site would cave in, probably take half the industrial sector with it." "Would it destroy the collective's operation?" Harrison's eyes widened. "Yes, completely. But anyone still in the area would. We get everyone out first. We find a defensible position away from the site. Then we blow it." Jake looked at the princess. "It's not much of a plan, but it's better than getting captured." Keisha's skin had turned dark red, the color of determination Jake had seen before. "Zartok, can you walk?" The old warrior grunted. "I can fight." "Good. Because I think our young human has a plan that's just crazy enough to work." They moved through the tunnels, Harrison leading the way. Behind them, they could hear collective forces entering the system. The hunt was on. Jake helped Zartok, supporting the wounded warrior's weight. The Sorix looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You saved the princess's life," Zartok rumbled. "Perhaps I was wrong about humans. Save the apologies for when we're not about to die," Jake replied, but he couldn't help smiling. They emerged from the tunnels far from the industrial sector, in the residential area of the city. Jake could see their shuttle in the distance, but collective soldiers were already surrounding it. No escape that way. We need to make our stand, Princess Keisha said. She looked tired but determined. And then we need to find a way to destroy that mining operation before the collective can use this colony as a base for further attacks. Jake looked at the city, at the alien landscape, at the people depending on him. He thought about his mom back on Earth, his sister, his friend Ben. He thought about all of humanity waiting to hear if they'd earned their place among the stars. Then let's get to work, he said. We've got a war to win. They found shelter in a cave system 2 miles outside the city. The caves were natural formations, carved by ancient water into the purple rock of Raxus 7. Jake and Harrison worked to make the entrance defensible while the remaining Velkari guard tended to Zartok's wound. The injury was bad. The blast had burned through scales and muscle, and the old warrior's breathing was labored. But he refused to show weakness, snarling at anyone who suggested he rest. "I've survived worse," he growled, though his color had faded to a sickly gray. Princess Keisha sat beside him, her hand on his arm. Her skin glowed soft blue, and Jake realized she was using her empathic abilities to ease his pain somehow. The bond between them was clear. This wasn't just a princess and her guard. They were family. Jake pulled Harrison aside. "Tell me everything you know about the mining operation. Equipment, power sources, weak points. Everything." For the next hour, the engineer explained the setup. The collective had brought in advanced drilling systems. Powered by a central generator, the quantum crystals themselves were unstable, requiring careful extraction to avoid triggering a chain reaction. "If we overload the generator and time it right," Harrison said, sketching in the dirt, "we could start a cascade. The crystals would destabilize, and the whole deposit would collapse. But getting to the generator means going through the mining site, and that's crawling with collective soldiers." Jake studied the rough map. His mind worked through possibilities, discarding ideas as quickly as they formed. Then something clicked. "We don't need to go through the site. We can go under it. The maintenance tunnels don't extend that far." "No, but the cave system does. Look." Jake pointed to the geological survey data on Harrison's tablet. "These caves connect to older tunnels beneath the industrial sector. The colonists must have used them during construction." Harrison's eyes lit up. "You're right. And if we can access the generator from below, we could set the overload without being detected until it's too late." "How long would we have after triggering the overload?" "Maybe 10 minutes before critical failure, 15 at most." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we need to be far away when it blows." Princess Keisha had been listening. Now, she stood, her skin shifting to determined red. "Make the plan work. I'll handle the collective." "Your Highness, you can't." "I'm not helpless, Jake Murphy." Her tone was gentle but firm. "While you and Kyle prepare the generator, I'll create a distraction. Draw their forces away from the mining site." "That's suicide," Jake protested. "Only if I fail." She smiled at him. And for the first time, Jake saw not a princess or an alien dignitary, but someone his own age, scared but trying to be brave. "Do you trust me?" Jake wanted to say no, wanted to argue, but he saw the certainty in her eyes. "Yes, good. Because I trust you too." That night, they refined the plan. Zartok, despite his injuries, insisted on going with the princess. "I've guarded her since she was a child," he said. "I won't stop now." The remaining Velkari guard, a young soldier named Tevrin, would provide cover for Jake and Harrison as they moved through the caves. They had one chance. If anything went wrong, they were all dead. As they prepared to move out, Jake found himself alone with the princess one last time. She stood at the cave entrance, watching the 3 moons rise over the alien landscape. "On my world," she said softly, "we believe that souls recognize each other across lifetimes. That certain people are meant to meet, to help each other become who they're supposed to be. Reller. We are Market." "Also, he wasn't round. Is that why you chose me?" Jake asked. "I chose you because I saw strength in you that you haven't recognized in yourself yet." She turned to face him. "But there's something else. When I looked at you that day in the council chamber, I felt a connection. My people don't form bonds easily, Jake. But with you, it was immediate. Like I'd known you forever. Before Jake could respond, she placed her hand over his heart. Warmth spread through his chest. Gentle and profound. He gasped as images flooded his mind. Not words or thoughts, but feelings, her fears, her hopes, her absolute certainty that he was exactly who she needed him to be. What was that? He whispered. A bond. A connection between us. If something happens to me, if I'm in danger, you'll know, and I'll know if you need me. Her skin glowed golden, a color he'd never seen before. Bonds like this are rare, sacred. I wanted you to understand what it means. Jake felt like he couldn't breathe. Keisha, don't say anything. Just promise me you'll survive. Promise me you'll get back to Earth and tell them about us. About what we tried to do here. I promise, Jake said. But you're going to survive too. We both are. She smiled sadly and walked back into the cave, leaving Jake standing alone under the alien stars. They moved out at dawn. The princess and Zartok headed toward the city, moving openly along the main road. As expected, collective forces spotted them within minutes. Alarms sounded, and soldiers poured from buildings in pursuit. Meanwhile, Jake, Harrison, and Tevrin slipped into the cave system. They moved quietly through darkness, using only minimal light. The caves were eerily beautiful, with crystal formations that glowed faintly in response to their presence. The quantum crystals react to bioelectric fields, Harrison explained in a whisper. The glow is harmless, but it means we need to move fast. If collective forces see the lights, they'll know someone's down here. They descended deeper, following Harrison's map. Jake's legs burned from climbing, and the air grew thick and warm. Behind them, Tevrin moved silently, weapon ready. After 2 hours, they reached the old construction tunnels. These were different from the maintenance system, rougher and less finished. Support beams showed signs of age, and water dripped from the ceiling. We're directly beneath the mining site now, Harrison whispered, checking his instruments. The generator should be above us. Inside a maintenance building. They found a service ladder leading up. Jake went first, pushing open a heavy hatch. He emerged in a small building filled with humming machinery. And there it was. The generator. A massive piece of equipment covered in alien symbols and warning labels. Harrison climbed up beside him and immediately got to work. His fingers flew over the controls, bypassing safety systems and rerouting power. Sweat dripped down his face. This is delicate work, he muttered. If I make a mistake, it could blow immediately. Or not at all. Jake kept watch at the door. Outside, he could hear the distant sounds of fighting. The princess was keeping her word, keeping the collective busy. He felt a pulse of emotion through the bond they shared. Fear, determination, pain. She was hurt. Jake's hand tightened on his weapon. Every instinct screamed at him to run to her, to help her. But he had a job to do. If he didn't complete it, they all died anyway. How much longer? He asked Harrison, his voice strained. Almost there. Just need to. Got it. Harrison stepped back from the generator. Lights began flashing, and a high-pitched whine filled the air. Overload initiated. We have 12 minutes. They ran back to the hatch, but before they could descend, the door burst open. Collective soldiers flooded in. Weapons raised. Don't move, their leader shouted. Jake raised his hand slowly. Through the bond, he felt Keisha's sudden spike of fear. She knew he was in trouble. The collective commander stepped forward, studying them. The human and the engineer. Commander Vrax will be pleased. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you down. Who's Commander Vrax? Jake asked, stalling for time. The generator's whine was getting louder. The leader of this operation. He's been most interested in you, Lance Corporal Murphy. The human who represents his entire species. Imagine the leverage that gives us. The commander smiled coldly. Your princess surrendered herself an hour ago, offered to trade herself for the rest of you. Such noble sacrifice, such stupidity. Rage flooded through Jake, hot and bright. Keisha was captured. And these people planned to use both of them as hostages. The generator's whine became a scream. The collective soldiers looked around nervously. "What's that sound?" one asked. Jake smiled. "That's the sound of your operation ending." Understanding dawned on the commander's face. "The generator! What did you do?" "What needed to be done," Harrison said calmly. The commander grabbed Jake. "Shut it down. Now." "Now. Can't. It's past the point of no return. You've got about 8 minutes before this whole place comes down." The collective soldiers looked at each other in panic. Some ran for the door immediately. Others hesitated, unsure whether to believe him. Teverin chose that moment to emerge from the hatch, weapon blazing. In the confusion, Jake broke free and joined the fight. The small building became chaos. Jake wasn't the best fighter. He'd never be a decorated hero. But he'd learned one thing in the Marines: survive. He fought dirty, using everything around him as a weapon. He kicked a soldier into the generator controls, threw another through a window, grabbed a piece of equipment, and swung it like a club. Harrison and Teverin fought beside him. Together, they pushed through to the door. "Run!" Jake shouted. They burst out of the building and raced for the cave entrance. Behind them, the generator's scream had become a roar. The ground shook beneath their feet. "The princess," Jake gasped as they ran. "Where is she?" "The Central Plaza," Teverin said. "Vrax has her there. He's using her to broadcast demands to the Coalition fleet." Jake stopped running. Harrison grabbed his arm. "We don't have time." The explosion. "Go to the caves. I'm getting her out." "Jake, you can't." "I can and I will." Jake met Harrison's eyes. "Get to safety." "That's an order." "Jake," before anyone could argue, Jake turned and ran toward the city center. The bond pulled him forward like a rope. He could feel Keisha's location. Her fear. Her pain. She was hurt badly. He had 5 minutes before the generator exploded. Maybe less. Jake Murphy, the unremarkable Marine who'd been chosen by accident, ran toward certain death to save an alien princess. And he didn't hesitate for a second. Jake reached the Central Plaza with 3 minutes to spare. His lungs burned and his legs felt like rubber. But he didn't slow down. Through the bond, he could pinpoint Keisha's exact location. She was kneeling in the center of the plaza, hands bound, with Commander Vrax standing over her. The Void Collective leader was tall and thin, his species unknown to Jake. Vrax was broadcasting a message to the Coalition fleet, which had just arrived in orbit. Around them stood at least 20 collective soldiers. Impossible odds. No backup. No plan. Jake didn't care. He opened fire from the edge of the plaza, taking down 2 soldiers before they even knew he was there. Chaos erupted. Soldiers scattered. Returning fire. Energy blasts scorched the ground around Jake as he ran, weaving between old fountains and abandoned vehicles. Vrax grabbed Keisha, using her as a shield. "Stand down, human, or she dies." Jake slid behind a statue, breathing hard. 2 minutes left. He needed to think. The old Jake would have panicked, would have frozen. But something had changed in him over these past 2 weeks. He'd stopped being the kid who'd joined the military to pay for college. He'd become someone who protected people, no matter the cost. Through the bond, he felt Keisha's thoughts. Not words, but emotions. Trust. Belief. Love. She believed in him. Had believed in him from the start. Jake stood up, hands raised, weapon on the ground. "Okay. You win. Let me trade myself for her." Vrax laughed. "You think I'm a fool? I'll keep you both. The generator's about to explode. You've got maybe 90 seconds. Let her go, and I'll tell you how to shut it down." Vrax's expression changed. "You're bluffing." The ground trembled. "Not a bluff anymore. 70 seconds, Jake said calmly. Your choice. Die here with your hostages, or let her go and maybe escape with your life. Vrax's soldiers looked at him nervously. The ground was shaking harder now. And in the distance, they could see the industrial sector starting to collapse. Buildings leaned at strange angles, smoke rose into the purple sky. Tell me how to stop it, Vrax demanded. Let her go first. For a long moment, the collective commander just stared at him. Then he shoved Keisha forward. She stumbled, fell, her skin pale and covered in wounds. Jake ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. I've got you, he whispered. You came back, she breathed. Of course I did. The shutdown code, Vrax screamed. Jake looked up at him and smiled. There isn't one. The generator's going critical, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You've got about 40 seconds to run. Understanding and rage flooded Vrax's face. He raised his weapon, aiming at Jake's head. But before he could fire, the ground beneath them cracked. The cascade had begun. The plaza split apart, buildings collapsing as the quantum crystal deposits destabilized. Vrax and his soldiers scattered, running for their ships. But the ground kept breaking apart, swallowing structures whole. Jake lifted Keisha in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body slim and delicate. Hold on, he told her. He ran. The bond guided him, showing him safe paths through the destruction. When one route collapsed, he found another. The world was ending around them. But Jake didn't stop. He reached the edge of the city just as the industrial sector exploded. The blast wave knocked him off his feet, sending them both tumbling. He twisted, taking the impact on his back, protecting Keisha with his body. When he looked up, the mining operation was gone. In its place was a smoking crater. Several collective ships had been trying to take off, but the explosion had caught them. They fell from the sky like burning stars. Harrison appeared beside them, helping Jake to his feet. The caves collapsed, but Tevrin and I made it out. Zartok's wounded, but alive. We need to get to the rally point. The Coalition fleet is sending shuttles. They half-carried, half-dragged themselves to the evacuation site. Zartok was there, leaning against a rock, his scales stained with purple blood, but when he saw the princess, relief flooded his face. You foolish child, he growled affectionately. I taught you better than to surrender. I learned from the best, Keisha replied weakly. But Jake taught me something new. Sometimes the right choice looks like the wrong one. Coalition shuttles descended from the sky. Medical teams rushed out, tending to the wounded. Jake watched as they took Keisha away on a stretcher, her hand reaching for his until the distance broke their grip. The next 3 days passed in a blur. The Coalition fleet secured Raxus 7 and rescued the colonists from collective transport ships. Vrax was captured trying to flee the system. The evidence of illegal mining was overwhelming. Jake spent most of his time in the medical bay, being treated for burns and exhaustion. They told him he'd been incredibly lucky. Any of a dozen injuries could have killed him. He didn't feel lucky. He felt numb. On the 4th day, they summoned him to the Starbound Harmony. Commander Hayes met him at the docking bay, her expression unreadable. You've caused quite a stir, Lance Corporal, she said. I was just doing my job, ma'am. Your job was to not start an interstellar incident. Instead, you destroyed a mining operation, took down a Void collective commander, and saved an entire colony. She paused. The council wants to see you. The council chamber looked the same as it had 2 weeks ago, but everything felt different. Jake stood in the center, alone, while alien dignitaries studied him from their elevated positions. Councillor Tavera, the silver-skinned delegate who'd opposed humanity before, spoke first. Lance Corporal Jake Murphy. We have reviewed the reports from Raxus 7. Your actions were reckless, dangerous, and completely outside established protocols. Jake's heart sank. They were going to reject humanity anyway. They were also, Tavera continued, exactly what the situation required. You showed initiative, courage, and most importantly, you protected others at great risk to yourself. These are qualities the Coalition values highly. Princess Keisha entered the chamber. She was still healing, her skin pale, but she moved with her usual grace. She came to stand beside Jake, and through their bond, he felt her pride and affection. The trial of worth had a simple purpose, Keisha said to the council: to see if humanity's true nature matched their presented image. I believed it would. Jake Murphy has proven me right. He represents not humanity's best soldier or brightest mind. He represents their heart, their capacity for compassion and sacrifice. Zartok limped into the chamber next. I opposed this trial, he rumbled. I did not trust humans. But this one fought beside us, bled beside us. He is worthy of standing with any warrior in this coalition. If you reject humanity, you reject the very principles we claim to uphold. Even Dr. Harrison appeared, giving testimony about Jake's quick thinking and adaptability. One by one, voices spoke in support. Finally, the council voted. The silver orb that represented each species lit up. 1, 2, 5, 8. When the final vote was cast, Councillor Tavera announced the result. By majority vote, humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition. You will have 5 years to prove yourselves worthy of full membership, but as of today, Earth joins the community of worlds. The council chamber erupted in applause from the observers. Jake felt his knees go weak. They'd done it. Humanity was in. Commander Hayes appeared beside him, tears in her eyes. You did it, Murphy. You actually did it. We did it, Jake corrected. All of us. That evening, there was a ceremony. Jake was awarded the Coalition's Star of Valor, a medal that few beings ever received. They offered him a position as liaison between Earth and the Velkari Empire. You don't have to decide now, Princess Keisha said. They stood together on an observation deck, watching the stars. But I hope you'll consider it. Working together, we could help both our peoples understand each other. What happens to us? Jake asked quietly. The bond. What does it mean? It means we're connected. Always. Distance won't break it. Time won't fade it. She took his hand, and her skin warmed at the touch. Among my people, such bonds are sacred. But I won't ask you to give up your life for mine. You're free to return to Earth. To your family. I'll understand. Jake thought about home. His mom's cooking, his sister's laugh, his friend Ben, who probably thought Jake had lost his mind. He could go back to all of that. Finish his service, go to college like he'd planned. But when he looked at Keisha, when he felt the bond between them, he knew the truth. His life had changed the moment she pointed at him and said those words. He could never go back to being who he was before. I'll take the position, he said. But I want Earth to send more people. Regular people, like me. Show the coalition that humanity isn't just a few special individuals. We're all capable of this. Keisha smiled, and her skin glowed that golden color he'd learned meant joy. Then, let's build something amazing together. 6 months later, Jake stood on the same observation deck with his friend Ben, who'd been selected for the cultural exchange program Jake had proposed. 20 other humans had joined them. Regular people from all walks of life. Teachers, engineers, artists, farmers. The coalition was learning what humanity really was. Still can't believe you went from nobody to hero in 2 weeks, Ben said, shaking his head. I'm not a hero, Jake replied. I was just in the right place at the right time. And you made the right choice, Keisha added, joining them. She and Jake had grown closer over the months, the bond between them deepening. The council had stopped seeing it as strange. Now it was seen as a bridge between two species. Jake looked out at the stars, at Earth visible in the distance, at the coalition ships moving in formation. He thought about that day in the council chamber when a princess had looked at him and changed everything. He'd been nobody special. Just a regular guy trying to pay for college. But when it mattered, when everything was on the line, he'd become exactly what was needed. Maybe that was the real lesson. Maybe everyone had the potential for greatness inside them. They just needed someone to believe in them enough to give them a chance. As the ships prepared for departure on their next mission, Jake Murphy smiled. The journey was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see where it would take them next. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and Jake had helped show them the way.